Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
At first, we hit your gadgets with our state-of-the-art digitalized mobile studio with the debate on the road behind the wheels. Later, we launched our magnificent studios located on Plot 1A, Sewagude Close, Lukulinanganda, Machindye, Kampala, where we bring to you our must-watch shows like The Mighty Drive, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m., Hotline, Mondays, 7 p.m. As for legal matters, Twins at Bar, Tuesdays, 11 a.m. Wednesdays, 6 p.m. is Afro-Caribbean Link, where we connect Africa with the Caribbean. Voltage on Thursdays, 7 p.m., featuring a youthful panel. Interface with Dr. Kiza Besije every Friday, 12 p.m. with his call to action against injustices. Snap Talk, Saturdays, 6 p.m. with the trio. A must-watch, The Political Dice, Sundays, 8 p.m. with the duo that never stammers, and so much more. Watch us live on all our social media platforms. We are the Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Good evening, Uganda. I welcome you to Face the Nation on this Friday. My name is Edgar Matthew Karuhanga. This evening, I have Dr. Livingstone Sewanyana, the Executive Director for the Foundation for Human Rights Initiative, Uganda. This day, we are going to have a conversation mainly on the work of civil society organizations, how it's thriving in this country, and of course, what can be done to improve the civil society organizations and generally that particular fraternity in the country. Mr. Livingstone Sewanyana, you're most welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome to Face the Nation. How is your work doing in the Foundation for Human Rights Initiative, Uganda?
As you're aware, we're a human rights advocacy organization, and our role is to broaden the space for civic participation and to ensure that as many people as possible who are vulnerable get access to justice.
Okay.
So within that framework, the organization continues to pursue its mission. As you are aware, we offer legal aid services. We have a legal aid program which is assisting quite a good number of people. Here and in Bushenyi, we have a field office in Bushenyi which works in Greater Bushenyi. And even here, we are reaching out to universities. We are cooperating with the judiciary. We are working closely with Parliament. We are working closely with the local government and also the ordinary person. We always and regularly raise issues that concerns common people and how they are treated and matters of public interest. So ideally, as an organization, we continue to fulfill our mission. However, like any other organization operating recently, we have challenges. One of our major challenges is to meet the demand. The demand is overwhelming because, as you know, about 40% of Uganda's population, they live below the poverty line. So they have problems of survival, basic problems of survival. They have problems of accessing justice. They have problems of having their voices heard. So often they seek recourse to us, and we have limited capacity to
So that means the problem of human rights is big in the country? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Many people often look at human rights within the context of civil and political rights, or, in terms of how political activists are treated, or how laws are made. But when you talk about human rights, you are talking about the whole realm of human survival. You are talking about issues of poverty, you are talking about issues of elections, you are talking about civic participation, you are talking about education, you are talking about health, you are talking about security, you are talking about relations among states. Human rights is a broad concept, and as such, when we speak about rights advocacy, we are not restricting ourselves to just the political angle. We are looking at the civil angle, the economic angle, the social angle, and also issues of interstate cooperation. So it's a broad issue. So many people sometimes think that when we are discussing rights, we are only interested in, how political activists are treated, or whether courts, grant grant justice in a timely manner, or whether people are on remand for long periods of time. No, the rights discourse cuts across the entire spectrum of society. So we are concerned about, for example, the national budget. We are concerned about how health is performing, education is performing, agriculture is performing, issues of employment for our population, issues of standard of living, so issues of how Uganda fares with other nations. So it's a big issue. So when I say we're a human rights advocacy organization, we cover the entire spectrum of rights.
Okay, now let's look at the nitty-gritties, the impact itself, the specifics. Because it's broad, we have a bigger problem, and it's not only politics, as you have just told us. Let's look at the impact itself on the specifics. When you look at the specifics, some of the issues you raised over this year, what are some of those things or sectors that you have advocated for in terms of human rights this year? And you can tell us that an example, we've helped these and these people in this time frame for the 12 months. Okay. Sorry for putting you on the spot.
It's a long journey. It's a very long story.
Yes, sir.
Maybe you may not be aware. The Foundation for Human Rights Initiative is in its third year of existence. So our existence began during the conflict period. You remember during the times of the Lord's Resistance Army.
Yes, sir.
So during those years, our focus was on conflict prevention. And we did a lot of work in northern Uganda on issues of peace building. So maybe one area where we have made impact had to do with the peace building process and the fact that northern Uganda is peaceful now. Of course, one will say, oh, that could have been the role of the UPDF. Yes, they did their work, but our role was also to ensure that the different players come to terms with the need to have peace. So we had conferences in northern Uganda, we had missions to northern Uganda, we spoke about the treatment of people in northern Uganda by the UPDF and other forces. So we engaged a lot. So one of our earliest impact in this area was the fact that the whole area is now pacified. There's peace in the region. But our efforts at peace building are not restricted to northern Uganda. There have also issues around Kasese, you know very well. We also were concerned about how people in Kasese were treated. So on peace building, I should say, there's generally some degree of success now that we have and we experience relative peace. Now, beyond peace building, we have also been very much concerned about the question of prison reform. We are the first organization in this country to engage prisons on the necessity to ensure that the treatment of prisoners is in conformity with their standards.
Is it now in conformity?
We did a lot of work in terms of prison inspections across the country, ensuring that the prison in Uganda has an open door policy, that it can engage the public, and also ensuring that pre-trial detention is actually reduced. As I speak now, at some point, I think around 2020, our prison population was around 67% in terms of pre-trial detention. Right now, it's at 47%.
That's a good
So there has been a tremendous improvement in that area. In terms of treatment of prisoners, having an open door policy and ensuring that pre-trial detention is addressed. And that happened. As an organization, we have been very much concerned and interested in the whole question of legal access to justice for the poor. And it is for that very reason that this organization has been, for many years, since 1994, you may not know, since we have been running a legal aid scheme, reaching out to all manner of people, assisting children, women, prisoners sometimes who have no legal representation. Most people don't even know that we have legal aid teams. We have legal aid teams here. And rough estimate, you could say we have assisted over 100,000 people. Both here in our offices here, but also when we opened the legal aid office in Bushenyi. We have a legal aid office in Bushenyi operating in the 5 districts of Greater Bushenyi.
That's a great number, but there is also an issue of injustices hovering all over this country. Yes, you have tried to advocate for justice, but the people who, for example, the people of Kasese, nobody has been booked, nothing has been done yet to say that this is justice for them. When you look at the November massacres of the people who were murdered,
of course, I will.
Nobody has been booked.
Yeah, I'll be responding to some of the challenges.
What is the impact?
No, I'll be responding to some of the challenges, but I'm still looking at the impact.
Okay, sir.
You know, at the time when this organization was established, there was hardly any knowledge of human rights, either within the political elite or even within the ordinary population. Today, human rights is a household name. Even you and everyone, whether it's the media, whether it is the political elite, whether it's the youth, they all speak about rights and want to defend their rights. We have been in the front line of ensuring that there is understanding of what rights are and why you need to defend your rights and how they can be defended. So we made human rights a household name. And I think today, everyone is proud to defend his or her rights and speak out even if there is injustice.
Exactly.
So one would agree with that. At the time we started, there were hardly any human rights organizations. Today, there are quite a number of them because they have been inspired by our existence. The human rights movement in this country has grown tremendously in various ways, despite the challenges. Now, speaking strictly about the injustices that occur. Injustices remain in every aspect of our lives. There are injustices, for example, in terms of people accessing timely justice. We still have a backlog of cases in courts. We still have people on remand. That remains. We still have people who are mistreated by law enforcement agencies. We have people who cannot be, accounted for. They are missing persons. We still have those people. We still have corruption. We still have people who behave as if they're above the law. We still have impunity. But that does not mean that those issues have not been raised. One of our biggest challenges has been the slow, or call it relative and reluctance to respond to these issues by the state, by the powers that be. We still have a slow response rate to most of the injustices and the issues that are raised, that have a bearing of the ordinary person. We still have increases in poverty. We still have challenges of unemployment. We still have those issues. They are still relevant, and in some cases you would even think they're growing. The point is, this country is experiencing a reversal. There was a stage in the 1990s when we had made tremendous progress, especially after the conflict in northern Uganda, when the state was responsive, when generally there was an enabling environment for everyone to be heard, for example. But those spaces continue to shrink. They continue to narrow.
Aren't you worried about that?
Of course, everyone should be worried about that, because it means that our democratic credentials are compromised. But that is largely attributed to, one would say, to restrictions, legal restrictions. It's also attributed to, to our governance, our poor governance, but also to the fact that the ability of Ugandans to hold the state accountable remains very limited. We still have this issue of survival. When a country is poor, when people are poor, when people are pushed to the wall, they become inward looking. So they are more concerned about their their immediate survival.
Yes.
They are more concerned about the fact that their children will go to school. They are more concerned about whether they will have a meal the following day.
Exactly.
So they get less concerned about the broader governance issues.
Yeah, because I'm hungry, you cannot tell me about governance.
Exactly.
Yes.
So one of our biggest constraints to democratic development is poverty and unemployment. Because we have a small middle class, and that middle class is largely surviving because of access to the state.
Exactly.
It becomes very difficult for them to free themselves from that bond and be able to assert themselves. So there are still few voices in this country, and with that, the spaces cannot be broadened.
To what extent is the state affecting the work that you're doing as civil society organizations, generally in the broad scheme of things, not just for the Foundation for Human Rights Initiatives, but generally, to what extent is the state and government affecting the work that you're doing in the country Uganda?
If you want to understand the role of the state and its impact, you need to understand the formulation. Civil society exists between the family, the state, and the market. Each of those spaces are competing. The state is competing, the market is competing, and the family is competing. And now, to understand the impact of the state, you only have to see how much space has it allowed for civil society to play its role. Because remember, civil society organizations are complementary to the work of the state.
Yes.
If the state is non-responsive, if the state does not create the environment in which non-state actors can be heard effectively, if the state does not support that framework, then the role of civil society is largely limited. So, with the increasing, the narrowing of the space, with the restrictive, sometimes legislation, with the lack of response, it negatively affects this particular space, which we call civil society. Not only to be heard, but also to have an impact. Because it is not we in civil society who make things happen. It is the state which picks these ideas and then translates them into its programs and creates the desired impact that the people must have.
So if the state is not behind you, practically you won't do anything, or the impact will be minimal. Is that what you're trying to say?
Actually, your impact is minimized. Because remember, there are two types of states. We have what we call a weak state and a strong state. A weak state is a state that is non-responsive but also uses force. A strong state is one that is responsive and encourages participation. Now you can place our state accordingly.
Our viewers can.
So
place
the more you allow participation, the more you allow alternative voices to be heard and respected, the more impact both spaces make, the state and civil society.
Okay. You're still watching Face the Nation. My name is Edgar Matthew Karuhanga. This evening, I'm privileged to be joined by the Executive Director for the Foundation for Human Rights Initiative Uganda, Dr. Livingstone Sewanyana. We're still looking at the issues and the work of civil society organizations over the 30 years that they have been running this initiative in the country. The state has an idea that foreign agents are using civil society organizations to funnel resources to dissenting voices in Uganda. Most of these civil society organizations that you lead, they are a source or an avenue to fund ideas or things that want to undermine the work of the state. To what extent are these allegations true or false?
Yeah. Now, of course, those allegations and those perceptions are not new. Neither are they restricted to Uganda. Those are perceptions that permeate across the entire global space. One, as I said, civil society gets more acceptable depending on the nature of the state. If it's a weak state, they are less acceptable. If it's a strong state, they are more acceptable. Now, those views are paraded or largely emboldened by the fact that when the state finds it harder to deliver services, it must have an excuse. One of the excuses it has is that the resources it would have taken advantage of are being given to another player.
Yeah. Because in the past they used to receive, government used to use
Exactly.
that money.
Only that even the state enjoys foreign support. That's a contradiction.
Yes.
So what actually happens here, as I said, there's a competition. There's a competition for resources, there's a competition for ODS, there is a competition for impact. So those allegations are based on that competition. When civil society becomes much more vibrant, there is always a fear that it overshadows the state. And then the state quickly comes in to say, no, they are perpetuating foreign interests. But what are foreign interests? If I advocate for better health, better education, a more transparent election, or an environment where everybody is heard, how foreign is that? It is as relevant to me as a Ugandan as it is as relevant to any other citizen of another country. So to argue that what I'm saying or what I'm advocating for is foreign is a contradiction.
Because the interests are for the people here.
Exactly,
So
it's a
I get you.
contradiction. So that contradiction arises because the state finds it harder to deliver services.
So don't you fund opposition players as civil
Opposition,
society organizations? Yes.
you see, when you want to justify that thinking, then you become an opposition. You are viewed as an opposition. But you should be seen as a complementary force because it is the opposition in the political arena who should be seen as the alternative voice, as the alternative political voice.
Yes.
But for us, we are complementary. The work we do is to complement the work of the state. Why? When we reach out to people to help them improve their health standards, that is a role of the state which we are supporting. When we go out and give legal representation to people, legal representation is a role of the state. And when we come in, we are complementing the state. When we go out and review the legislation and advocate for better legislation, that's a role of the state. We are aiding the state. So the work of civil society or NGOs is to complement the state. So when we are doing this, we are not opposition. We are actually complementary to the state. But because the state is weaker, because the state is not delivering, then it sees us as an opposition. And for them to justify
Yes,
their
sir.
position, then they will say, you opposition, you are serving foreign interests. But I must say, we are serving one interest, and that interest is to ensure that the living standards of Ugandans are improved.
Okay, there are also some allegations that you get money from people who advocate for same-sex relationships. I'll use homosexuality, the word, that most of the civil society organizations in this country get funding from such groups. And this is, remember, already outlawed in the country as we speak today. First of all, is it okay to receive money from such a group of people, hypothetically? But also, did you receive or have you eaten money from homosexuals?
First of all, I must say very categorically that this organization has no links, neither does it advocate for such rights. Issues of LGBT or same-sex relations have no business with this organization. And therefore, we are not well placed to discuss even that issue because we are never and we have never been party to that discourse.
Okay.
We are a Christian-based organization, and we work for advancing the values of Ugandans. So we don't work parallel to that.
Okay.
We do recognize that there could be people who have those sort of orientations, but that's not our agenda here.
Okay.
So as such, we don't even know these people who may be giving funding to NGOs
As Dr.
who engage in that
as
area.
Dr. Livingstone,
Yeah.
you have been in this fraternity for more than 30 years.
Yes.
In your experience in those 30 years,
Yeah.
what can you comment on that issue itself? Not away from the organization that you are leading, but you as a person who has been in this space for a long time. What do you think about that?
You see, for you to understand this issue of same-sex relations, one thing you need to be mindful is that you have to act within the law. This is outlawed in this country. So as such, it is, I think it should be taboo for anyone to discuss this because we work within the law. We don't work outside the law unless we are working to reform the law.
Okay.
So that issue, as I've told you, in our understanding, is a non-starter. Because for us, we see human beings. We serve and advocate for the rights of Ugandans, irrespective of their status. And it's not our business to know what their status is. My concern is to defend you, irrespective of who you are, socially, politically, economically, or otherwise.
Okay, is it okay for us?
So for us, we hardly know or discuss orientations of people. Neither do we ever get to understand the orientations. We are more concerned, are you being treated fairly, justly, as a citizen, as a person?
Okay.
So when you come out and you say you are X, that is a business for another person.
That's not your business. Okay, let's go back to the issue of still funding. Some people have a narrative that these organizations do not really do their work. It's ceremonial. It's a place where they just get free money, right? That the impact is no longer there as we speak today. That the civil organizations are not doing their work, but they continue to get foreign money, sometimes money from here, the country, foreign local donors. How true is this sentiment that civil society organizations are no longer doing their work?
I think I can argue that they may not be making as much impact as they were, because there were more, and of course the numbers have reduced from 14 to about 5,000.
Yeah, 5,000 as we speak.
But I must say that they still those that exist are doing their work within their objective, and they are making impact within the communities they serve. You see, sometimes most of those who make these allegations have no knowledge of these organizations. For example, FHRI, the Foundation for Human Rights Initiative, is a membership-based organization. Our membership cuts across the entire country, of all sectors, and they contribute to the survival of the organization.
Yes.
So actually the bulk of our funding is local, and it has always been like that. We hardly get donor funding. We have very limited donor funding. We survive and depend largely on local resources. Every activity we organize here has local funding.
It's really surprising.
Exactly. So the perception,
the narrative out there is that a lot of foreign donors are giving you a lot of money and you just enjoying yourself.
I could say yes, we used to get funding. Like, for example, for election support work, there was a lot of funding for that. There was a lot of funding, for example, for monitoring human rights violations. But the bulk of the work we do is not supported by donors. So it is also important to understand these organizations.
Okay.
They are not the same. and they don't behave the same way. As a membership organization, I'm supported by members. I don't know whether people out there know that FHRI has ordinary members, life members, cutting across the entire spectrum of our society. We have judges who are members, members of parliament who are members, farmers, teachers, students, you know, and they contribute to the work of the organization. They contribute financially.
Okay.
And when we have an activity, we even have a harambe. We just concluded an AGM here last August, and it was supported by members, not by any donor.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So the point is, yes, NGOs get foreign funding, but all that funding they receive is meant for particular activities. You'll be shocked by the extent to which they have very little that actually goes to the organization. Most of the funding donors get, NGOs get, goes directly to the population. It will be to the activity, and there is very little that goes to the running even of the organization.
Okay.
That's something people who out there need to understand, that this work is a service to humanity and remains a service to humanity. And as such, those who have those dispensations need to understand how these organizations run and operate.
Thank you so much, Dr. Livingstone Sewanyana. As we come to the end, I wanted to us to also maybe look at, away from the civil society work itself, but look at the shrinking numbers, because as you mentioned earlier, from 14,000 in 2019 to 5,000 CSOs in 2025 as we speak today. Is this affecting, how does this affect generally the work or the impact that it's creating in the community of Uganda, those numbers shrinking and reducing by the day?
Shrinking numbers have a negative impact on the impact of the work that organizations do. The sector, one in terms of the sector. First of all, by its very nature, the sector shrinks, yet it's supposed to grow.
Yeah.
The more the numbers go down, the lesser the sector becomes more impactful. So the sector is not growing, it should be growing. Number two, it has an impact in terms of some of the services they were rendering. I am in the area of human rights, but there are other organizations that were working on issues of environmental protection, children's rights. The organizations, by their very nature, they work on a variety of areas. So I'm not going to deal with those areas they were dealing with. So it means that those areas cannot be addressed.
Exactly.
Because some of those organizations don't exist.
Yes.
But also in terms of the money they were drawing into the country. As you recall recently, it is now public knowledge, we are bringing in each year 4.7 trillion shillings to the country's economy. And we no longer bringing in this money. So with the shrinking numbers, we attract less money. So that means in terms of our economy, we are not benefiting from that chunk of money that would have come into the country. You can imagine 4.7 trillion annually as income to the country, because every shilling that comes into this country actually benefits Ugandans.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, we lose that amount of money. But also the shrinking numbers also negatively impact not only the growth of the sector and the coverage of the issues and the economy as such, but also it speaks to the voice. The voice gets reduced. So there are fewer people or few organizations that now have a voice on certain issues. And when the voice gets limited, it means participation of the people gets less, it's limited. So you can see the range of aspects where the reduction, the decline numbers actually has a negative impact.
Exactly, it shrinks down to the person. When you look at that, it's not just about the closure of the organization, but as the organization closes, the effects trickle down to the last
to the beneficiaries.
Then what do we do, sir? How can we improve this?
Of course, we have to continue to advocate for a more enabling environment. We should advocate for policy frameworks that allow for growth. We should also advocate for a state that is responsive to the demands of the people. We must also continue, we must also continue as a country now to understand the role of NGOs, because for others, they vilify the sector instead of supporting it. So what needs to be done is at the level of policy, advocacy, but also nurturing the sector, because part of the growth is largely attributed to the interest that had been generated. But also you must know that part of the decline is not necessarily because of policy. It is also largely due to decline in funding. So part of the strategy is also to support self-sustainability strategies.
Yeah.
And as you know, at the policy level, there has been an effort because, as you recall, Section 46 of the Energy Amendment Act now, 2024, provides for NGOs to engage in income generating activities.
Exactly.
Now, to reduce further decline, we must also work towards self-sustainability, but also the state must also support the work of NGOs by ensuring that they give them a tax regime that allows them to grow. Are you aware that URA also taxes us?
Yes, they do.
In terms of property tax, in terms of rental tax, in terms of income tax, we need tax reliefs as a way of growing the sector by way of incentives. So we also need tax incentives for us to grow. So when we are not treated in that way, that means then they are also reducing our ability to survive, because the little money we generate becomes, tax deductible, and as such, our ability to survive also is limited. So there are many strategies that can be employed to address this problem. It's not only at the level of policy, it's also at the level of taxation, it's also at the level of ensuring that there is an enabling environment and that there is responsiveness. You see, I spoke about a non-responsive state. Appreciation comes in terms of response. So we need a more responsive state. And once we have that, then the sector naturally grows.
Do you see any hope?
In terms of
because
here in the foundation, our tagline is keep hope alive. There should always be hope.
But in such an unresponsive dispensation and with such a system, do you see a light at the end of the tunnel?
I am never pessimistic, because today we are discussing the civil society sector in the last 30 years. At the time this foundation was established in 1991, there was hardly any organization. So why would you be more pessimistic? You should be alive to the fact that these obstacles can be overcome. Because when we established this organization, we had a lot of resistance. There was hardly any knowledge. There were hardly any people who are involved in this area.
It was new.
So there was complete absence of knowledge and awareness. But we managed to overcome that. And over the time, many organizations came up. So if you are speaking about 5,000 organizations plus, that is a good basis upon which growth can be attained. You see, you must always be alive, and we must always be alive to that. They are circles. It's the cycle. Organizations also go through cycles. They are born, they grow, and some die naturally. So you must also be alive to that cycle. They are like human beings. So when you are positive, you definitely create more opportunities. And that is our role as citizens. You see, many times when we talk about the shrinking civic space, we are pointing fingers at the state. Yes, the state, as I told you, is weak, but it's also our business to make it strong. Because when it is weak, it is forceful, restrictive, envious, and many times it wants to fight back. We must nurture a state that is responsive, respectful, and enabling. And that's the role of the citizen. So our biggest challenge is not actually the state. To many people, they think it is the state. Our biggest challenge in this country is poverty.
Okay. Maybe lastly, there are young people out there innovating, starting out organizations, civil society organizations, trying to create impact in their own time. What's your message to those young people?
I want to encourage them. I want to urge them not to lose hope, but to continue. I want to ask them to be innovative in what they are doing. Success is about innovation. They must take advantage of IT. They must be resilient, because success is about resilience. It's about, they must be skillful. They must also yearn for knowledge, because without knowledge, you can't continue. Our survival for the last 33 years is based on hope, pragmatism, proactivism, resilience, knowledge, because we capture and we take advantage of knowledge. So as an organization, if they really want to survive in a competitive environment, they must be able to marshal all of those aspects of values.
Okay.
And I want to encourage them, because the more they are, the better for our economy, the better for society. And also, sometimes in these developing nations, there's too much dependence on the state. Actually, we must be more dependent on each other than on the state. The state should actually be just a driver, but the real players should be the people.
Okay.
And when these young people form these organizations, they are creating a firm foundation for civic participation in society.
Thank you, Dr. Livingstone Sewanyana, for facing the nation. We've come to the end of this discussion today. And of course, our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in from the time we started up to now. My name is Edgar Matthew Karuhanga. You can go on our social media platforms at Digitalk TV, at The Alternative Uganda on Facebook, but also on YouTube. This video will be on either platform. From the entire team, we shall see you again next week at exactly 5 p.m. on Friday. My name is Edgar Matthew Karuhanga. Good evening and God bless Uganda.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.